It's wonderful you use the word witness, and that's what I feel perhaps an artist really is. And even in the way you craft your plays, ma'am, of course the stage remains the same. It's not like it's a moving proscenium or the set is moving all the time. There are some props moving here and there, but it just the even the architecture feels so real over there. The wall is actually a brick wall, and you play a lot with light and kind of animate different spaces at different points in time. So architecture also becomes a witness, which it actually is. It's no more what stagecraft is known to be, these plywood walls and stuff like that. So on this idea of the artist being a witness, I just want to kind of bring in Amba's work, because it's a wonderful document and it's a very different kind of an approach to theater. It's the travelogue that I'm playing. So I do see the connection over here of being witness to our interconnectedness, landscapes, so on and so forth. But I better let you do the talking.
Not at all, Siddharth. I think you should talk, because like Nilam ji was saying, right, we create in order for interpretation to happen. Otherwise, we might as well be stuck in our bathroom. It's also interesting that you chose to play this clip, which is a piece we worked on this year, actually, 2021, as opposed to the other one which we worked on 2020. And the set of questions we were asking, both pieces were with different companies, but just the questions we were asking were so different to each other. When the pandemic hit, we were all in this state of in this upended normality, right, where there is this deep introspection and this utter impotence, where you're questioning everything, but you're also questioning nothing. And you're just like in this state of limbo. And being an international collective, we were thinking, how do we come together? And the work that we made in 2020 is very different because the questions we were asking are very different, but we could no longer afford to be purists. And whereas mainstream theater has its own rigid form, fringe theater, I don't know, however you define that, has always played with multimedia. It's always played with digital forms, with audio forms, with live art. How do these, what is the intersection of these things? And that's, I suppose, that's what we were trying to explore with this piece. And this is only a very small part of a greater piece that was built as I was showing, and that larger piece kind of exists as an online gallery of remote collaborations, because there were I think there were about 10 artists in 7 different cities of the world that were coming together to make this. It meant that we had to reimagine form, structure, and relevance, and not just for the content of what we were creating, but of the company itself, right? Which was a really interesting journey. So more than the piece, I think the journey we have been on as a company is what defines this piece. And it freed up what is permissible as theater, what is permissible as an organic coming together of artists that want to make theater. And in a kind of way, it asked us almost to reinvent storytelling, right? Which is one of the most ancient traditions that we share across the globe. And it asked us to think about that in a different capacity that was more inclusive. And this idea of inclusivity is so fantastic, because I would have never seen, Nilamji, what you created, right, Black Box, had it not been filmed for the pandemic. These silos we exist in as performers and theater makers have been in a way broken because of the pandemic. And accessibility has kind of, I think that is the greatest, as you were saying, that there are good things and there are bad things about the situation that has had us in its grip for like 2 years now. And one of the good things is accessibility for the audience, much more than for the performer. Because what it has done in a kind of way is it has democratized the art form. TikTok is a great example of that kind of shift that has happened, where it is now available, content is available to make and watch by millions that it before would not have been. Before, we would have created a piece and we would have gone to some theaters in Chicago and Delhi and made our piece, and the same set of audience people would have come to see it. It was like preaching to the choir. And this kind of has opened doors where you can have it online. And yes, of course, that ephemeral experience is gone, that liveness is gone, but there is a greater collaboration that is possible because of it.
Yeah, it's interesting how you position this particular work, which is almost a film, right? There's so much of editing involved. One of the collaborators is the editor, and there are 2 counterpoints to what you've just presented. One in Amruta, where she is a very, very personal and solo performer if she has her way. And what Nilamji maintains is that the videography of her plays, yes, Nilamji, if correct me if I'm wrong, the videography of your plays is only for documentation. It has always been for documentational reasons. So that is why even after the film was made, Black Box, you did a performance in your studio for 8 people.
Well, maybe my generation, we are technical refugees. We are not born into technology like the generation of these 2 young girls and you yourself. we learned, I think I saw the first computer when I don't remember, but about 15, 18 years ago, just enough to use Word and maybe send an email. Now it's become so complex, even in terms of, I've been in certain, birthday celebrations of friends in Ireland, where they take you into rooms and all kinds of stuff, it's like wizardry for me. So it's a completely new space to be in. And for me, theatre is really about one live actor and one live audience and the linkages that take place between them. To me, that's very, very special. And whatever we do in terms of documentation or putting it online, we don't want to be, we're competing with Netflix and Amazon and, all these new channels, Sony and etc., etc. So why do we want to be the poor relatives? Because we'll never have the money, we'll never have the infrastructure, we'll never have the shebang that is required to make a film. We'll have one camera and, maybe, I don't know, that's not the skill we have acquired, at least I've acquired in the last 40 years of doing theatre. So it's a very, for me, it's an interim space. I think performance really means live. I cannot psych myself into believing that performance means digital. It can be documented for purposes of reference or recording, but that's not a play to me.
Can it not be both live and digital?
No, of course it can. I mean, of course it can. It's not, what I'm saying is not a rigid, unopened statement. I'm only talking in terms of not really knowing the whole intricacies of how it's done. Like even when Black Box was filmed, it was filmed twice, but it was filmed as a performance, frontal and from the side. So it wasn't filmed as a film. It wasn't taken in two different locales.
But I think that's exactly the point, Nilamji, where we are not competing with Netflix or Amazon. When we are making theatre or trying to make theatre for the online platform, it is theatre that you are witnessing. And it should not be compared.
All those so-called categorizations of this is theatre and this is not theatre are completely bungam. Anything can be, whatever captures the imagination, whatever captures the moment, whatever captures the interest. There are no rules. That is why nobody's writing new theories. There's no Stanislavski and Meyerhold, and maybe Anne Bogart is there, but nevertheless, I think everyone is going on an individual journey and creating their own way of working, dipping into hundreds of experiences that they have gathered when you reach my age, or what we have seen, what we have read, what we've experienced, how it is expunged. I always say to my actors, I don't really know what I want, but I certainly do know what I do not want. So for me, I like the whole, parda uthta hai, parda girta hai, though we never use parda uthta hai and parda girta hai, but I like the whole imaginative sense of what the theatre seems to suggest. The first bell, the second bell, the heartbeat in the wings, the waiting for the audience. I just love that whole experience of when the actors go on the stage, and then I feel my work is over, so I become completely invisible and I go into the green room and have my chai or just do nothing.
I want to preamble my response by saying I 100% agree with you, and I cannot wait to go back to hearing the first bell and the third bell and then stepping onto stage and feeling the heat of the lights. I just wonder, and this is more a question than anything, I just wonder, are we at that stage where something has intrinsically shifted? Are we at that stage where it's kind of like that quantum leap in evolution, where we either take this step and there's no if we don't. Theatre will continue exactly as it was the minute life returns to normal. And the theatre, as we all know, has been dying for what, 4,000 years, Steinbeck said, theatre's been dying for. And it hasn't died. And it continues in some form or the other. But I wonder if this is that period, if this is that evolutionary leap where we don't have to leave something behind. We don't have to leave the way it used to be behind. But it's forcing us to reimagine what is essential about that art form. And I wonder, and I would love to pose this question to the three of you. For you, what is essential about?
You know, like for example, when we say an actor enters the stage, where does he enter from? What is he carrying in his head? What is his history? You know, what is the residual stuff he carries within his body, within his mind, within his imagination, with the way he speaks his text. And when he exits, what does he take in the few moments that he's been on the stage? So using that analogy, I don't think we're going to be the same. I think big theaters and huge theaters were anyway useless. You know, whenever I heard about a big theater coming up, my heart would say, "Kyun kar rahe hain ye?" Theater is about intimacy. It's about breathing. It's about responding. It's about touching the man sitting next to you. It's about invading each other's space. I think the pandemic will shift the notion of spaces. It will shift the notion of ensemble work. Also, we're going to have a real about funding, about shows. So these are realities we are going to be confronted by, and we have to this has prepared us to deal with it. You know, it's like Albert Camus' The Plague. Even after the plague was over, the fear of the plague never left people. Whether they opened a cupboard or they went into their trunks, they always felt something would leap out. So that I don't know if he'll be able to hug in the same way. If he'll be able to, I don't know. I mean, people also have short memories. They forget very fast and very easily. But I just wonder, we just have to see and wait. But yes, something has intrinsically shifted within us. A sense of mortality, a sense of the transitoriness, the sense of so many beloved people having been lost. You know, there is a sense of mortality that, you know, it's like 100 Years of Solitude, where Marquis talks about the blood entering your threshold. So whether you have been affected or not, the blood has entered our threshold. How it's going to color us, where we're going to go from now is a question which we hope we can meet again and reflect on.
I just want to reinforce something Neelamji said, which really should be at the center point of our conversations when we talk about theatre during a pandemic, which is kind of the exact opposite of the plus for me, which is the word that I can't seem to say, this democratizing of spaces and of the form itself and of audiences, is the revenue generation. It was hard enough to get bums on seats theater. It is even harder getting money for something you put on the digital platform. Even harder to say to them, hey, no, this is real theater. You can pay for this. Because the same amount of effort and time and collaboration has gone into this. That selling point.
On the other hand, I don't know, you know, because I've seen some theater where people are in there, whether they're in Pune or Nagpur or Bombay, and individually they are coming together and they make a play. This can only be an interruption to the real sense of people coming together. To me, the flesh and blood, the smell, the touch, it's all missing. Until you can really smell your actors and you can smell the sweat pouring down the body or almost lick the tears. I don't mean that people should actually cry on the stage. But that kind of thing is irreplaceable. I may sound terribly old-fashioned to your generation.
No, not at
no,
all.
ma'am. Absolutely not.
Not at all. It does not sound old-fashioned at all, because when the pandemic first hit in 2020, that's what that was the bulk of our conversations at that time. What if we make something digitally on the Zoom, on a video or whatever, what qualifies as theater? And it's exactly what you say, Nilamji. It is that liveness. And it's not just the liveness, it is what is theater without a live audience? Forget having a live fellow actor. You can have scenes where you don't need it. Amruta will testify to this. You can have scenes in performance where you don't need a fellow co-actor. But what does it mean without a live audience person? And for me, that is what is essential about. And that is something that the digital platform will find very hard. How do we preserve that live experience? And we tried to do it, and I don't know how successful we were, but so yes, not old-fashioned at all. It is what
Try performing before in an empty auditorium. Even when you feel that your house is not the way you expect it to be, something collapses in the energy of the actor.
Oh my God, yes.
So a performance, it's like Laurence Olivier was asked, how can you do 100 shows of the same play over and over again? He says, because every day my audience changes. And that change brings a change in energy, which makes me discover new dimensions, new nuances to the character I'm portraying, whether it's King Lear or Hamlet. So how the audience, kind of
interact
subtly.
Yeah.
I would like to add something what Nilamji was saying. I have been deepening my practice in clowning, and I'm working on solo clown show now. I have worked for rescued women, I have worked in hospitals, and that instant gratification is not there when I don't see. I mean, I have performed for one child, and I'm okay with that. But how can I do clowning having no response, zero response? For I mean, clowning, I tried several ways. I tried to record I recorded myself. Yeah. I tried recording myself, and it's like you're recording like a movie or something, improvised piece, and showing it to the audience, social media audience, and that's it. It was really difficult for me to imagine doing. I mean, we tried that because hospitals asked us to record the videos and shared with them. So another friend, she did that. It could help them in some way, but then that was it. They were like, okay, fine, that's helping, but that's not real. That's not live. We are not getting live feedback from, like, we are just doing clowning for ourselves. I'm doing clowning for no one.
So this kind of leads us to the last part of our conversations, where the question of space and community, no matter how temporal, transient these two are. Before I get into that, let me just share this wonderful thing that Elon, who was on the panel on Monday, he's based in West Yorkshire, and they have a community theatre space over there called Kala Sangam. And gracefully, Kala Sangam opened up for performers and theatre people for a week without expecting any outcome, without expecting any output. So, of course, Elon and his partner were very happy. Besides that, there was one lady who would just come to that space, just lie down in that space. That's what she did for 5 days, nothing else. That is how much she needed to be in that space of creation. So it's not just about the space of performance and the audience, but also the space of creation where you want to be in that environment. So people are really desperate for that. So this brings me to the last question of where, Amruta, you kind of disclaimed, there was a disclaimer from your end that, I'm happy performing alone. But the question still remains, what about that space of creation, of sharing, of collaborating? Of course, we are not going back to how things were, but what do you look forward to would be my last question in terms of space and communities.
When I say I'm happy I'm happy being a solo performer, I have three different roles. Like I'm an educator, I'm an entrepreneur, and for me as a performer, it's not just about performing all the time. As an entrepreneur, to create the space for participants, to create safe atmosphere for participants, this was important. As an educator, I need to educate myself or do research in what I have been performing. So there is a major shift happened in me, not during the pandemic. It has happened before. Um, that as a performer, I feel quite secured within myself, and I feel like I need to go within. Like we don't just grow like this; we grow like this way as well. So I'm happy not performing all the time. So during this time, I'm researching. I'm doing my research about performing, what I'm going to do next as an entrepreneur, what needs to be taken care of, how I can support my community or my people. My community is a community space I'm holding. How can I have safe space for people around me? And the journey has been like this. During this time, I have taken deep interest in how we can go about addressing sexual harassments in performing art world, and how we can talk about this and how we can support women or anyone in that matter. So it for me, it's not just about performing. It's interconnected system. So I would not just talk as a performer. So the whole system.
Neelamji, from you, what do you look forward to now?
I don't know actually. I am just looking forward to the moment passing peacefully without these continuous bombs that are dropping on us politically, psychologically, um, where somewhere, no, I always say that no matter how dark my plays are, I have to end it on an affirmative note. I try to end it on an affirmative note so that, whether through a child's game or through something, because no matter how savage the times, we have to keep some sense of hope going. But I think the pandemic has sort of reversed that sense of affirmation, that sense of optimism. It's been such a dark period for all of us in different ways. And what I really miss the most is really teaching. I enjoy teaching, being with young students, that whole communication, that whole energy of being able to connect, to share, to communicate, to perhaps impact something that you say or something that they say should impact me. So there's that energy I miss. Again, the energy of a life space. Nothing goes on forever. So this will also, after all, when you talk about, when you dip into history and you talk about the Spanish flu or the plague, they all lasted for 2 years, 2.5 years, till some solutions were found or some vaccine was found. So I don't know actually. I just hope that my loved ones remain safe, because I've seen too many deaths and too much illness and too much loss and grief. So one just hopes that there's a tomorrow which we can look forward to. I don't know it, but at the moment, one's feeling is so ambivalent about what's going to happen. Like, for example, I feel that I've stopped reading huge fat novels because I don't know if I'll be able to complete it. So I seem to read a short story. I don't seem to watch serials because I don't know whether I'll be around to see the seventh or eighth episode. So there is a sense of not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow.
Amba, besides the democratization of the space of theatre, what do you look forward to?
I agree with everything that Neelamji just said, actually. And I find myself still in a state of flux where we are thinking about the future in a way that we have never thought about the future before. And yes, historically, in times of adversity, has been a great spur for creativity as well. Shakespeare wrote most of his, some of his best plays during the plague. The Great Depression led to a boom in these kind of Hollywood classics. And yet when you find yourself in the middle of it, I don't know what the best outcome is, because once again, I feel I'm in a bubble. I am in a bubble of privilege, sitting here, being able to firstly use this medium, consider even the possibility of this medium, and have these conversations. And there are theater makers and performers and artists that do not have that privilege of switching gear into this new medium. I would like I was saying before, in an ideal world, I would love for us to return to normal, whatever normal was, only in terms of the theater, where we can go back and share a moment that will never happen again. Share an experience that only the people in that space have shared. But equally, I would love to see what the possibilities are of these two mediums coming together. For me personally, what does it mean for us to all be creating content together and it being viewed together for a fixed duration of time, after which it will no longer be available, and have with us a cyber audience, or whatever you call it, a virtual audience, plus a live audience? And is there a way for these worlds to meet? And we started to scratch at the surface of that just a little bit with the Shakespeare Ensemble, which is based in Wales, where in the first year of the pandemic, we're talking about exactly these kind of conversations about what can we not do without? What is essential? Because we are all in lockdown in our houses. Forget a live audience, we can't even see our parents or whatever it is. And we created this piece born from that feeling of stuckness, born from that feeling of impotence, where you are being forced to stop. It is an externally governed thing where you have to stop, but you are bored in that stoppedness. And can we break these silos through a digital means? Can we explore our isolation, and it was a deep feeling of isolation, through a digital means? And we created this piece where it was essentially 45-minute solos by 9 different actors from across the world. We didn't know what the other performer was creating. We never saw it. And what emerged finally was these 9 different performances, but the parallels between them, the overlaps between them were it was almost as if it was telepathic. And till date, we don't know how it happened. How did so much cross-layering happen? But it did, in a way that it happens in a space, in a physical space that you share with other performers. And for me, that is exciting. For me, opening up our work to audiences that would otherwise never see it, never experience it, that is exciting. Working with people that I would never have worked with if I wasn't stuck in my house, that is exciting. Working with students in Chennai and Bangalore and Gujarat that I would never have come into contact with, that is exciting. So I'm also ending on an affirmative, positive note.
Yeah, so glad to hear that. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. Amruta, Nilamji, Amba, thank you so much for agreeing to participate, for having this wonderful hour and a half and more. Thank you for making me feel beautiful and empowered. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
You are beautiful and empowered.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.